everyone. It's Joseph Rosales, and welcome back to Business in the New Normal, where we discuss balanced and accurate and sort of important to a big understatement important information about how your business can not just survive but thrive in this changing environment and economy that we are all finding ourselves working through. I'm joined today by my co-host Ike Devji. Ike, how you doing, bud?
Good to be with you, Joseph.
Good. Well, thank you, thank you. And yeah, it's a rainy, cold day here in Arizona, and thank God for the rain. But I love the sunshine. It was snowing this
Yeah,
morning, and
unusual.
it's crazy. We have snow on the ground out here. But today, I have the honor of being the guest on the show. We have a lot to talk about today, and we've got so many things going on around us in the economy with the virus, and with the vaccines, and with the economy, and with all the rules and mandates that we're finding with businesses that are going to be dealing with all these changes. And Ike, you are an asset protection attorney, and you help people and businesses to protect themselves from these instances that are going to show up in business all the time. And so, what's going on in your world? And anything on top of your head you want to share with our listeners before we get started with the interview?
Well, I think it's great that we're doing this today. Certainly, this show is for leaders, right? It's for business owners. It's for people who, in many cases, create their own wealth, who help employ others, who build businesses, and with all of those things you mentioned, all the challenges that people are currently facing in business with the economy, with lockdowns, with fear of COVID, with consumer confidence, as you said, with some of the technical and compliance details. Success right now in being able to survive another year or more as the vaccine gets distributed in our country and our economy gets back to normal. Leadership is more important than ever, right? Being able to make those changes, being able to make decisions, being able to motivate others. So I think the topic of today's show is very important, because this is one of those intangibles, right? We've had very tangible discussions of specific things like how do you manage the security risks of a remote workforce, right? We've had our IT experts on. We've had experts on how do you sanitize your business. We've had experts on how do you insure your business against these risks. But all of that comes back to somebody in the office at the end of the hall who has to make the tough decisions. And I think that's part of what we're talking about today. In terms of what's going on in my world, we're helping clients with a wide variety of issues. Some are preparing for tough times ahead. Others are preparing for great success. Sometimes that's the same thing, right? You can't achieve one without going through the other. If most of the most successful people that I know have worked very hard and pushed a big heavy rock uphill to get to the point where they can let it roll down the other side. And so we're helping people with a variety of issues. And my new article that's out today is part 2 of a checklist on how to start the year and some specific asset protection issues to look for. And we'll talk about that, I think, a few episodes from now down the road as well. We're going to share some of those details with our watchers.
Where can people get that article?
A few different places. I post a lot of my articles that are published. I repost on LinkedIn. They're on Twitter. The one that is coming out this morning is published at physicianspractice.com, where I've been a columnist for 10 years plus, and have written a couple hundred articles on asset protection and business law.
Okay, and you always post those on our group chat on Business in the New Normal on LinkedIn, right?
Yes, we do have a LinkedIn group that has a name that's similar to the name of this show, but it's not just about this show. We pull in information from many sources, and our group members post information there as well. And that LinkedIn group is called Business in the New Normal.
Yeah, cool. Well, always valuable stuff. I read it all the time, and you're pulling a lot of valuable information from a lot of different sectors, from a lot of different perspectives. And I think that's, again, what we encourage people to do is, you can't listen to one news channel and get the full story. You have to be willing to invest your time and your energy and your resources to understanding the left side, the right side, and the middle. That's where you're able to make the best decisions. As leaders, if you have a conflict between two employees, you have to listen to both sides. You have to listen to what happened here and what happened there, because we know in my life I learned an adage decades ago that there's generally three sides to every story: their side, your side, and what really happened. Right?
Right? It's the old what's the old Japanese film Roshamon, right? That you may have seen, where they, we see the exact same thing from multiple viewpoints, and that is important. And that's kind of a great segue. Um, Lots of people coach and advise others on things,
Mhm.
and not everybody doing that has actually been there and done that and should be doing that and has a background um, that provides them the real world that you have. And I think as we get into today's discussion about leadership and the leader of you and all the neat things that you're doing around that, it might be helpful to start by if you could share with us a little bit of your personal background, your business background, your professional background, and how that brought you to the point of being an expert on this and working with businesses all over the world to help them, sharpen their leadership skills.
Well, thank you for asking that. And it's funny because I, I've been around a long time, and I don't talk about myself often. I don't promote myself often. I promote what I do and some of the books and courses we're doing, but it's rare that I have an opportunity to talk about myself. And so in just a couple of minutes, I guess I can share with you that I started my my business journey at 7 years old. And my first job was working in a pet store, and I got paid in fish. Literally. And I wrote an article, I haven't published it yet, called The Boy Who Got Paid in Fish, because my stepfather bought me an aquarium and said, now you can go cut the lawn or do work around here, and I'll pay you a little bit and you'll be able to fill that tank up. And I says, okay, but I didn't like yard work at the time. So I went down to the pet store and asked the guy if I could sweep floors or clean up things, and he paid me in fish. And he said, sure. So that was my first job. And it was interesting because, how does that have to do with leadership? Well, I became a leader of me very, very quickly in my life. I don't know where it came from. My parents weren't business people. None of that was given to me or produced in me or influenced in me. None of my brothers were ever in management, and just something that was innate. And I became a leader of me early because I figured if I want this, I have to go do that. And along the way, when I was 17 years old, I was given an opportunity to be in sales at a large department store. I was promoted within 6 months to a manager. And I learned, and in my first book that I wrote, Customer Service is a Contact Sport, that I wrote back in 2005, I learned from the best. I learned from Angelo Scorsone, Mike Palin, and Ron Brown. These three guys took me under their wing and showed me it wasn't just about the business, it was all about people, selling to people and leading people. And I started my journey at 17 and a half years old as a leader. And I'm much older than that now. And you're right. It's interesting because a lot of people go through these leadership certification programs and learn from others how to be a leader, but maybe they've never been a leader themselves. I started as a leader myself, and then I added the other, and there's some great leadership programs out there, and I've been through many of them, and I've learned from a lot of amazing people. Um, but as I progressed up the ladder and I became promoted from a manager to a group manager to a store manager, and then I got very involved in training, I started realizing that the challenge wasn't training people as much as it was getting people to do what they knew they needed to do. I say all the time, it's not what you know, it's what you do with what you know, right? And it's the same in leadership, because people know that they should become better leaders. They know that they should be able to inspire and motivate and draw people toward the objective, but they don't know how. So I'm going to say probably 90% of leaders have never been trained on how to lead. They just do what they do the best they know how. So my journey continued whereas as I started going up the ranks and I started getting promoted and I started leading other managers. And in 2000, in 1986, I started this company. And I started it from a bedroom in our house, and I started it and grew it to a multi-million-dollar company with clients that were in the Fortune 100 scale. And our business there was teaching other businesses how to succeed. And it started with teaching the leaders. Everything starts from the top. And we see people that have good people that are not being led. And the problem with leadership is a lot of people think because they're in charge, they're therefore a leader. And we know a lot of people, and some of our listeners here see this all the time. Somebody's in charge, but they're not a good leader. And then there are people who are leading, but they're not in charge. And you don't have to be in charge to be a good leader. That it's interesting that they are not the same thing. So along the way, about 15 years ago, I started really focusing on leadership as one of the core principles of our company. And the leader of you, ironically, and I'll get to that in a second, but I'm going to tell a story about how the leader of you came to be. But leadership became one of the core elements of our coaching and our consulting, because great people need great leaders. And leaders come in all different sizes and shapes and demeanors and characters, and leadership is a universal thing. As you know, I coach leaders all over the world, and I have one cohort right now that has leaders in 12 different countries that I'm coaching at the same time. And you know what? It's all the same. It's all the same challenge. It's all, how do you communicate with people, and how do you get people to see the vision, and how do you equip them, and how do you keep them motivated, and how do you measure them and hold people accountable to those results? That's all leadership.
Well, you mentioned the word essentials, and I know that's one of the chapters in the book. And the leader of you is leadership essentials. You've just mentioned that a couple of times. What are some of those essentials, Joseph? Because it sounds like they translate across every business. So, what are some of the essentials that that you think are the most important and that you focus on in the book?
Well, if it's okay, I'm going to take some right out of the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
The leader of you.
Start to become an even more effective leader immediately. Get your copy
The
of The Leader
subtitle is
Review
"You Can't
at
Be an Effective Leader of
theleaderofyou.com.
Others if you're not first enough effective leader of self." Um, one of the chapters called Leadership Essentials, the subtitle is Traits of a Leader. What are those traits? What are those things that every leader does? And there are 21 here in the book, but there are probably more than 100. There might not even be a number that you could cap these on. And so in the digital course that's coming out in a couple of weeks, I expand on these 21 to many more. And we're going to continue to, I have a new podcast coming out again called The Leader of You. It should start in about 2 weeks. And you'll be able to go to theleaderofyou.com and see that. But that's where I'm going to expand on these 21 leadership essentials. But one, for example, is vision. What's the vision for this team, for this business? What's the vision for you as a leader? Because if you can't see it, it makes it extremely difficult to achieve it. Many people are successful by accident. I prefer people to be successful on purpose. Leaders, sometimes they just do and say the right thing, and sometimes they do and say the wrong thing. And you know what? Well, none of us are perfect as leaders. We all have flaws. We all have weaknesses. But we all have things that we could do even better. And one of the things that is an interesting and is another essential is being transparent. Think about that as a leadership essential, transparency. Not just transparency with others, but transparent and honest with yourself. Are you really as good a leader as you think you are? What do other people think? We talk about that in one of the chapters on reflection. Who said you're a great leader? You? Is it because people do what you say and don't ever argue with you? Does that mean you're a good leader? Or is there are there other things that you're hearing and seeing and experiencing in your business on a day-to-day basis that really gives you that sense that people like working with you, they like following you, your results are outstanding, um, the people that you're working with on your team are growing and evolving into even more effective members of your team. Those are traits that a leader can say, yeah, I'm doing a good job. But it's usually when other people say that. So I say it all the time. A vision without a plan is just a dream. And I've been saying that a long time. A vision without a plan is just a dream. And I mean a written plan, not just a thought, a written plan. And it could be a simple plan. But if you think about that, a vision without a plan and without action will remain a dream. So we need a vision, we need a plan, and we need action. If you take those three things and you look at a leader, what's your vision? What's your plan? What are your actions? If you do those three things and you do them in an organized way, you will see different results in your business, results that you may have never thought were even possible. There are businesses out there, and we see them all the time, that are producing at about 60% of their potential. How can that be? How can any business survive at 60% of their potential? Many don't. 80% of small businesses that are not part of a franchise fail in the first 3 years. That's statistics. Why? Because people don't have a vision, they don't have a plan, and they don't do the actions to accomplish that plan. So it's interesting because there's another point here, and I'd like to just kind of get you involved in it. But when we think about clarity, is another leadership essential. Ike, in your practice, do you ever come across clients that aren't really clear about where they're going?
We do. We do. And where we often see that is, the folks that I work with are some of the most successful people in the country. And whether that's because they have picked a professional profession where they have an ability to earn a significant amount of money, like the physicians we protect, whether they are much higher net worth folks who have bigger incomes that are typically entrepreneurs and business owners. And we sometimes see that they are good at something, and as you said, in some cases have succeeded by accident, or the success is surprising even to themselves, and then they plateau. And they feel stuck that, okay, I built this business, we build this widget, we sell a bunch of widgets, but we have been at this level of widget sales, production, and profit for a long time, and we don't know where to go next or what to do or how to make it bigger. And that is something that that we do see. And then we also see folks who, once they've reached that position, don't have a good handle on how to keep it, because there's always somebody that wants your spot.
Sure.
No matter what you do.
Amen, brother.
And so those are a few things, and those are important basics. And thank you for sharing those. You've talked about clarity, vision, a plan, and action so far. I know that those are some of the essentials. Are there some others that you want to cover today?
Well, there's a couple, and this is one that I think is so important, and it's consistency in leadership and consistency in your business. I'm a big fan of In-N-Out Burger. I think they're the most amazing operation. Yeah, I love their burgers. I am amazed at the level that I see things at. And I see things at a very high level because I've been doing this a long time. I can look at a business and pretty quickly make an assessment of some things that are going on right or wrong and some things they could do differently to be even better. I was at an In-N-Out one day, and I asked one of the employees who was working at the drive-up window, I said, so why do you love working here? Because they all seem to be happy. And he says, I love my managers. They're very consistent. You know that if you do it this way, here's going to be the result. And if you do it a different way, you know what they're going to say. And and I was reading in one of the most important, most influential books I've read in my life is The E-Myth. It's one of my top 3 reads, and it's a required reading for any of my small business customers. And it's Michael Gerber talks about consistency, and he tells a story that as a consumer, imagine if you went to go get your hair cut, and the stylist uses shears, no electric, stuff, uses clippers and cuts your hair beautifully, and his assistant comes over and asks if you'd like a glass of wine, and he uses a hot towel on your face afterwards, and this is almost like a spa treatment. Sounds pretty good, right? Sounds, wow, this is great. And by the way, the haircut's great. So 6 weeks later, you come back for another one, and this time he doesn't use clippers, he uses electric shears on part of your hair, not the other part. This time, the assistant doesn't come and ask you if you'd like a glass of wine. She brings you a glass of water. And no, there's no hot towel this time, but it's still a good haircut. Well, okay, it was different. It was still good. I come back a third time 6 weeks later, and this time he doesn't use scissors at all. He uses only the electric razor thing, no hot towel. She doesn't even ask if you want a glass of water this time, nothing. Well, you see the inconsistency there? Same people, same haircut, same salon, same price, same result. The haircut was still great, but now I'm less likely to go back because I don't know what to expect. And it's the same.
And they've lost their competitive edge also, right? Those were the things that differentiated them from every other hair cutter in the entire, was that level of service. Yep.
Exactly. But the fundamental thing here, and this is something we can't avoid, we can't overlook as consumers, inconsistency. Inconsistency is something we do not like as consumers, as humans. We like consistency. We like things, we like to be able to anticipate that things are going to be a certain way. Now, if you think about that, why has McDonald's become the biggest, restaurant provider in the world by far? And the McDonald's like companies, it's consistency. It's not the best burger. It is not the best burger, but it's consistent. You know what you're going to get every time you go. So people like consistency. And it's the same in leadership. If one day I do this and you praise me for it, and then the next day I do that and you chastise me for it, it's the same thing. That's a real problem. Why does that happen? Because it's the mood I'm in, or because I didn't really understand, or maybe you did it last time and I didn't notice it, and this time I did. Inconsistency in leadership is so important because people like consistency. They thrive on consistency. They like to get there and they like to do their job. And as they continue to grow, they like to be praised. They like to be, accoladed. But at the same time, when I make a mistake, I like somebody to say something to me, not in a mean, aggressive way, but just, hey, I noticed this. Is there some help I can give you? Wow, that's consistency in leadership. So leaders have to be consistent. You have to be consistent in your expectations. Everything that applies to one person applies to the next person. That is an issue that I see in leadership all the time, where one person can do something and get away with it, and the other person gets chastised for it. That's not consistent. Doesn't mean routine as much as it means be consistent and fair and applicable in your expectations and your standards with everybody. And now people know what to expect. There's one more, and this is one that we see all the time, is self-control, control of self. And I wrote here, the ability to control one's reactions may be one of the most challenging disciplines for many leaders. We all talk about passion. Well, I'm a passionate leader. Okay, that's great. And I love passion. I love people that are energetic. I mean, you and I are passionate people. We're into what we're doing, but we have to be able to control ourselves. We have to be able to control our reactions. We have to control our language. We have to control our response. Because if we don't control our responses, then our responses are uncontrolled. Now, one of those sounds not good, right? Uncontrolled responses is not good.
And that leads to a significant amount of liability from where I sit as well.
In all kinds of ways, including if I am upset about something or somebody, and you know what, we talk, another one of the leadership essentials is tolerance. I wasn't going to talk about it, but we have to be tolerant with people because nobody's us. Nobody is us. We all think we're the best at what we do, and maybe we are. But that means that everybody else doesn't have to, pay with our intolerance because they make mistakes. Making mistakes is such an important part of as a leader, of allowing people to make mistakes, allowing people to experiment, allowing people to take risk, allowing people to do things that might be outside of our little box of the way we do it, but it still produces the result that we're looking for. Because as leaders, we're really looking at results. Now, sometimes methods have to be applied that are consistent, that produce that result. But other times, for example, my tone of voice may be a little bit different than yours. My greeting may be a little bit different than yours with a client, that I'm meeting. But as long as we're saying essentially the same things with our own character, that's a good thing. We like character. We like a flavor in everything. Everybody can't be exactly the same. We can't have robots, but we need to do things in a certain way to produce a certain result. So self-control is important. I can't tell you how many managers I see where they looked at that cartoon, where the pressure keeps building up, building up, building up, and all of a sudden they blow their top and they say things they didn't mean, or maybe they didn't. Yeah, and it's like, and it's, no, don't get there. Self-control is so important, and planning how you respond, and and it's important. This is stuff that's important in life anyway too. I mean, think about it. I can look back on the moments of regret that I have in my life, and I can tell you, of the 10 that I could come up off the top of my head, probably 9 of them were a result of me not being in control, me not exerting self-control, me responding to something that somebody said, responding to something that somebody did, mostly in my younger days, but they still resonate with me today. When, had I been under, different mindset, I would have had a different level of control, and I would have responded differently to that situation. Because sometimes when you say things, you can't take them back, right? Damage is done. So there's I said in the book, there's 21, but there's many more, and we're covering those in the digital course. And I'm telling you that there's so many things that leaders can do to become more effective leaders of self, so they can become more effective leaders of others, and help move everybody toward the objectives for the company that we've laid out and that we're really aspiring to achieve.
Well, and that makes a ton of sense to me because we talk to clients about controlling risk and liability and having a compliance program in place, and those are specific technical words for some of the same concepts that you're talking about, right? We talk about, for instance, having payment policy, so that's part of having a plan, is what you would call it, and then uniformly enforcing that policy with every employee, partner, and owner, right? So again, that's the consistency that you're talking about. And if you do not, for instance, taking your general concept of consistency and applying it to something very specific, if you have an employment policy as one example, and you only enforce it with certain people based on your reaction to them, that is often what is known as discriminatory conduct, which then leads to either conflict or a lawsuit from someone inside your own business. So again, you're talking about general concepts that have very real, tangible results. And as I'm listening to you, I'm connecting the things that you're saying, the things that I see in terms of the actual mechanical parts of the business, right? In terms of, no, we don't play favorites. Everybody follows the rules consistently. We treat every customer or client the same way consistently, so that every employee knows what the rules are and what the expectation is, right? All of those things, as you said, promote the longevity of the business. And of course, having a plan to do that and having somebody sit down and enforce that plan as the leader. Now that brings us back in a sort of a roundabout way to the course itself, right? So part of being a good leader is having a plan, an organized plan to increase your leadership skills. And in some cases, that's going to be reading a book like The Leader of You. In some places it's going to be like going through a digital course and a master class like you're putting together, that's coming out for business leaders soon to take these general ideas and give them a specific path to follow and organize that for them.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that, about the digital course and the master class that will help folks get their head around some of these things and put their own plan together.
Well, thank you for asking that. The digital course is the how. The book is the what you should do, what you should be thinking, how you should be looking at things from a perspective standpoint. The how is how you do it, how you gain people's trust. One of the leadership essentials is trust. You can't be an effective leader if people don't trust you. But how do you gain trust? What are the things you do? What are the things you say? How do you say them? See, I said this earlier in the interview. In my world, it's not just what you know, it's what you do with what you know and how you do it. How you greet somebody is critically essential. How you explain, how in your business, how you explain your services. And then how you do your services is different than that you offer the service. Yeah, we offer this service. Great. Okay, here's what it is. But how you explain it. And in your business, and you deal with a very high level of client, how you explain things to people helps them get it or not. And we need people to get, as leaders, we need them to get what we're talking about. And when I explain my vision for my business to a team member, it's really important that I explain it in a way that they get it. But then how we do that, how we do each component of the vision is what's important. How we market, how we advertise, how we communicate, how the process and the symptoms. And again, going back to one of my favorite books of all time, The E-Myth, it's all about process. A business without good process is going to just be very inconsistent all the time. We do it kind of the way we do it the moment we're feeling that way, however the spirit leads us, right? Versus this is how we do it. This is our step. And this is what we do and how we do it. And so leadership, this book by design was only 38 pages. It's a quick read. You can read this book in an afternoon or an evening. I can't teach you how to become an effective leader in 38 pages. We can talk about the issues. We can talk about many of the things. We can stimulate a lot of conversation. But the how is going to come in the digital course, and the how is going to come in the master plan class, and the how is going to come with you laying out a consistent plan for yourself and those areas of weakness or strength as a leader that you can focus on and get better at. A lot of it's communication. So much of leadership, so much of business, so much of life revolves around being an effective communicator, right? I mean,
absolutely. As I'm listening to you go through these things, I'm thinking about, I gave you some examples that came to mind from clients and for people that I talk to about their businesses. But the last part of what you said also, that that communication factor can't be overlooked, and I think it is crucially important. And I was thinking about how I do those things in my own business, and I have learned that there are certain things that everybody has to hear about, certain things that I do. For instance, as an attorney, there are certain pieces of information that every client has to know. There are certain warnings and caveats that every single one of them must understand when implementing the kind of planning that I use, as to when it's legal, when it's effective, what you can do, what you can't do. And over the last almost 20 years that I've been doing this, I have found that it's important that I say the exact same thing, the exact same way every time. And that is both so that I am sure that I am giving them all the information that is vital for them, and so that I am sure that if they misunderstand it or misinterpret it, or if there's ever a gap in their understanding, that I know exactly what I said, because I know how we say it. And there's a process involved. There's a process involved even in how I give a client a letter of recommendation that outlines their planning. because there's certain things that should be addressed in order so that they are logical, so that one thing completes the next and that we're building a foundation.
Mhm.
And all these things that I've taken for granted, you're putting into focus with just some of the comments that you're sharing. And I'm seeing, my wheels are turning as I'm listening to you, thinking about the things I'm doing right and the things that I should do better. And I guess that's part of going through a course like this, is that it helps you see your own weak spots and helps you have that reflective moment and lead and manage in a way that is more than just instinctual and reactive, that is more focused, and that is ultimately more effective. Now, I know we try and keep our discussions on these things limited to a certain specific amount of time for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, and to stay on track. And we've covered a lot of different issues today. Speaking of specifics, how do people get the book? How do they reach you? And how do they find out more about the digital course and master classes? And if it's, so they can determine if it's something that's right for them.
Well, they can go to theleaderofyou.com, and there they'll find information to order the ebook or the printed book. Next week, the digital course will be launched on there. The link to it will be launched on there. It's a 6-week course. It comes one module every week, so you're not overloaded with 6 modules at once. It's one module each week, so then you can engage that module and work on those things that week. So it's a 6-week program. And then the master class is a 3-week program after you've graduated from the digital course. You can't go to the master class without reading the book and doing the digital course. It's not an option, because we want people to have the foundation to be able to move to that next level. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. As you know, as I told you, I teach for a major university back east, and we do leadership and management development. And these are the same types of small, what we call micro learnings, where you're learning something quickly and using it right away, so it becomes part of your repertoire of things that you do, instead of reading something and 6 months later you start to do it or don't do it. But so yeah, theleaderofyou.com.
Well, that's great, and I know we'll have that up in the credits as well. There'll be some detail on people and how to do that. Now, Joseph, one thing we didn't talk about is a lot of the people who watch this and subscribe to our podcast are business owners, and they're working on their own business, their own personal development, their own professional development. Is your class really for owners, or do you think that if I own a business and have a bunch of managers who work for me, that this is appropriate to run them through as well, so that you're all on the same page, or to help them develop their skills as well?
Yes and yes. The yes is
Okay.
yes, it's for owners, and yes, it's for the leaders that work for that owner. In the first credit in the book is, this book is for all who lead. Anybody.
Great.
And it could be leaders of not-for-profits, leaders of sports teams, leaders of business teams, leaders of a family, leaders of a community. Whoever leads will do well to read this book. And
well, that's true. There's so many different types of leaders and so many different areas in each of our lives where we have to display leadership. When you do individual consulting beyond the virtual world and the book and the digital course, when you go into a company and work with them, what does that process look like? Do you always start with the owner, or do you work with the management team, or is it always integrated, or is it different depending on how each business is set up? What does that look like if somebody says, yeah, I read your book, I like your course, but I want hands-on. I want Joseph in my business doing some more direct consulting, which I know you also do internationally.
Right.
What does that look like?
It always starts with the leader. It always starts with the owner. It always starts with the executive management team to talk about their perspective on what they see as the challenges and opportunities in leadership in their company. And then it goes to the mid-level. We cannot take one perspective we have to take a multi approach of at assessing what the perspectives are. So we look at senior management, middle management, and then we basically look at producers, whatever that is, sales, service, whatever that is. I like to get a complete picture of what we're really looking at before I start making recommendations about anything. I play a lot of golf, as you know, and the best golf pro would never start giving you suggestions until they've been on the range with you, they've been on the course with you, and they've spent some time with you hitting balls and watching your course management and everything else. Then they can start making recommendations. The consultant that starts making recommendations to you is really trying to cure a symptom of what you're telling them, which might not be accurate, versus looking at the cause. Let's look at the business. Let's see where we are. So it always starts with assessment, and that assessment can be a few hours to a few days, depending on the type of the company it is and the complexity of the assessment. But once we have a clear picture on where we are, and we have a clear vision for where the company thinks they'd like to go, then we can start talking about what you've been doing and what we could be doing to help you achieve whatever it is, whether it's increased sales, increased production, increased customer retention, return on your investment in your business, leadership. There's so many different aspects to it, but yeah, it always starts with where are we? Got to start with where we are.
And that makes a lot of sense, that sort of multi-factor approach that you outlined just now, and looking at different viewpoints from the top to the bottom of the management food chain, so to speak. Makes a lot of sense, because if you put your list in front of a bunch of leaders, regardless of their actual skill or what's actually happening in their company, I bet a lot of us would just go down that list and say, yes, I'm consistent. Sure, I have a plan. Yeah. And then when you ask other people in the business, including their subordinates, that perspective might not be shared. So,
and it's interesting because sometimes people don't know what the words mean. Are you consistent in your application of leadership? Yeah. Well, what does that mean, really? We have to get in there and look and ask questions. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about some examples, and they will find out, and you will find out that they might not be as consistent as they think they are. So, they're, as I've been doing this over 40 years, and I've worked with thousands and thousands of business owners and leaders. And it's rare that I find someone that really is clear on their own personal effectiveness and the effectiveness of their team. People in business are about measuring their results at the end of the game, end of the month, quarter, year. We need to be looking backwards and looking at the activities that generated the results. And those activities are not just what our people are doing, but what are our leaders doing? What are our processes look like? What do our policies look like? What are all the things that we do and say along the way every day that are producing the result that we're eventually going to count as our quarter or year? Does that make sense? And we really need to be clear about those things. And I pride myself on being highly objective. I've been doing this my entire adult life, and I love what I do. I love sitting with people and helping them see it, get it, and achieve it.
Well, that's great, and I'm glad we were able to take some time today and go through some of these things in detail. Many of us, many of the people that both you and I work with, are very hardworking. They're very successful because of that hard work. And in many cases, they are so busy and involved in dealing with the mechanics and the minutia of operating the business that they haven't had the opportunity or been forced to stop, take a step back, and look at issues like this in a intentional and tactical way. And I'm glad we were able to spend some of that time together and get into some of these things. And hopefully it helps the folks that we talk to and who this program is geared towards. And hopefully they see the connection between all of the specific things that we've been covering in so many different areas and their role and their responsibility in making those things happen. So
thank you for
this has been a great start.
Thank you for leading the discussion. I want to leave our listeners with one thing. We all can become even more effective. I want you to add that word to your vocabulary today. even more effective, even better leaders, even more successful, even happier, even whatever. You may be happy, you may be successful, you may believe you're a good leader, but we can all become even more effective at what we do. And that even more effective, that's where so much more of your success is going to come from, because it's in that last 10 or 20% of things that you do that really takes you to that very next level in your business, that highest level in your business. So with that, I'm going to say thank you again to my co-host, Ike Devji. Thank you, Ike, for leading us on this discussion today. And I'd like to say thank you
My
to
pleasure.
everybody who helps produce this, Alex Beakley, who always is there with the videos and getting everything else done, getting all these things posted. And for that, I'll say thank you so much again for joining us on Business in the New Normal. I'm Joseph Rosales. Take care. Bye-bye.